Hey beauties, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you guys how I keep my brushes clean. One of the most common questions I get is how do you keep your brushes so white? Because when I'm doing my eyeshadow tutorials, my brushes are always clean, they're always white if they are white in color, or they're just clean in general, and I get asked all the time, and I feel like I always tell people that I use the Beauty Blender Solid, and I do, but I also use other things. And it's kind of scary for me to do this video because I do not want to disrespect the brand, like Sonia G, Tom Ford, Smith Cosmetics, all these brands. I don't want to do or say something that is going to be like, oh my gosh, don't do the brushes that way. I was so scared to do this video. So with that being said, just know this is how I clean my brushes. This is what works for me, and this is something that I have been doing for years and years now, and I haven't had any issues. If you think that something that I am doing is bad, please let me know. That's fine, but do it in a kind manner, please. But anywho, I'm going to show you a bunch of dirty makeup brushes. These are actually some of the brushes that I cleaned on camera for you guys. So I'm going to insert footage of me using four different products and how I cleaned them. So I'm going to start off with what I've always talked about, and it is the Beauty Blender Solid. I will either use the minis, which I get these all the time. You're going to see this in the video. Anytime Sephora comes out with the deluxe sample of the Beauty Blender Solid, I grab it. I pick it up and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I love this for my brushes because you can see this gets the color out like nobody's business, and it doesn't over dry my brushes. However, with that being said, there are a few brushes that I feel like need an extra little bit of conditioning after I use this or any type of cleansing method. A brush example would be the Smith Cosmetic brushes. This one right here is the 247. These are what I consider to be workhorse brushes, but they do end up kind of splaying out a little bit. So I like to take the brush, I will clean it either in my Beauty Blender Solid or one of the other methods that I'm going to talk to you about. And then, this was just a random thought. If you guys remember, I used to have platinum hair, but it was a pixie cut. And this shampoo and conditioner was the only thing that really helped revive my hair. And it is from Strong Sexy Hair, and this is the strengthening conditioner that has aloe vera and mango butter. And up top you will see up to 80% less breakage. And I figured, okay, if it's good enough for my platinum blonde fried hair, which is, I still use this whenever I wash my hair, which is once a week, I was like, it's gonna work for my brushes, and it really does. So if I feel like my brushes need a little extra hydration to them and I feel like they're starting to spray out a little bit too much, I will go ahead, wash my brush like I typically do, and then put it into the cleanser. Other than the Beauty Blender Solid, I also love the Beauty Blender, I think it's called the Pro. It's a black one. I recently ran out of that, so I don't have it anymore, but I do use two other products. I'm going to show you me getting color, pigment. These are straight up pigments. So this is when I was using the Viseart palettes and the Anastasia palettes. You can see I've got greens, oranges, and pinks everywhere. All of these methods get out the color from my brushes. I used to use baby shampoo, but I feel like that just didn't work enough. It was nice and gentle on my brushes, but I felt like I was having to, I don't know, wash more or having to multi-process, meaning I would have to wash it once, wash it again, and wash it again. I do have one of those like little scrubby things. I don't like to use my brush on that. I will use a sponge on it, but I can't find it. It is MIA right now. The other two products that I like to use, this is the one that makes me scared. Okay, Dove Sensitive Soap, specifically this sensitive one. There's no little scrubby particles in here, nothing. I've always found that Dove has been very gentle on my skin as well as my brushes. I love using this. So if you're on a budget, Personally, my experience with Dove soap and washing my brushes is it really, really, really works. Sometimes this won't get out, like in this brush right here and this one. These are two synthetic brushes that I like to use either for my concealer, like I put concealer right here before I go in with my foundation. And then I will also prime my eyes with the Anastasia primer. Sometimes this doesn't do as good of a job of getting that out, but it's just one of those things where I have to do the method more than once. And then the other thing is from ALORI. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but this is a vegan brush cleanser. This one is Apple Crisp. I don't remember what the first scent was, but I originally bought it. I talked about it. It smells like Love Spell from Victoria's Secret. If you remember Love Spell from Victoria's Secret, the original one smells just like that, but this one is, it's my favorite, Apple Crisp. They come out with all these different scents all the time, and I really, really enjoy this. I use it for my brushes as well as my sponges, but I do prefer to use either the Beauty Blender Solid or my Dove soap for my sponges. I just feel like sometimes this can leave a little bit of a residue inside of my sponge. It does clean it, but I do think that this kind of leaves something there. Now, getting into how I actually clean my brushes, there's a few rules that I absolutely do not ever, ever, ever break. The first rule is do not fill up a cup, put soap in it, water, or anything like that, and have your brushes, like say this right here, all my dirty brushes, and I want to put my soap at the bottom of this and fill it up with water, you know, even to here, and then do this. If you do that, you are loosening up the glue that is holding the bristles in place, and that is how you're going to end up with your brushes falling apart. You're going to get more hair loss out of it, and you don't want to do that. The ferrule and this end right here should never be fully submerged in water, especially for a long period of time. So when you see me washing my brushes, I like to have it pointed down under running water, kind of get it a little bit wet, take whichever one of these. I'm going to show you me using every single one. So the first one I'm going to use is the Beauty Blender Solid, and I'm going to take a brush and I'm just going to go kind of back and forth. I do not want to take my brush and just smash it in here and go to town. If you do that, you can ruin the shape of your brush. If you sit here, smash down on it, and go to town, you're going to push all the center hairs upward. I remember when Cadence used to help me do my brushes. Every once in a while she still will, but she freaked me out when she did this. She accidentally ruined one of my brushes doing this, and it just, everything in the center would just stayed shoved down. So don't do that. Next, once I have the amount of cleanser, I kind of go back and forth. I will rinse off the cleansing bar, go back in, rinse it off sometimes. Sometimes I will even rinse off my brush and go back in, just depending on the color that is on my brush and how much product. After I've done that, I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to do the same kind of motion back and forth. Again, not shoving it in my hand and going like this. I don't want to do that. I go back and forth, and I'll even take my finger sometimes and kind of work the product into the bristles, but I want to make sure that the bristles are always kind of in their position that they're supposed to be. So when you're making this type of motion, they stay in the position that they are supposed to be in. Afterwards, I rinse it out, and you will see that my brush is pointed down. I don't let it come up like this and try to clean it out. Again, you're going to ruin the bristles, and also you're going to get some splaying out of it, and again, the glue. You do not want water to be going into this ferrule, so avoid it as much as possible. My next trick is that I like to this is how I shape my brushes. I do not do it really tight and go like this and get as much water out of my brush as possible. I do it gently. So I will go like this. It takes out the excess water, but leaves some in, and then I lay it flat. That makes it to where the shape of my brush is going to dry in the way that I want it to dry, and it doesn't end up looking like a fuzzy mess afterwards. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like using the Dove Bar soap. Again, using the same type of method, going across the Dove Bar, and then I'm going to rinse it out. I'm going to work out the product, go and get the excess water off, and then I'm laying it flat. Another rule: do not dry your brushes like this. So don't wash your brushes. Do all of those great things for them, trying to keep the water out, and then set them in a cup like this, upright for them to dry. Water is going to be going down into the ferrule. So I always put them usually on top of a paper towel. Not always. Sometimes I line them up on my bathtub, like on the side, because yeah, I have a lot of brushes sometimes because I've done so many eye tutorials, face looks, and I just need a lot of room. The bathroom is not always the best, and I use the kids' room. It has a dual sink, but there's like a Jack and Jill's type of situation, but that was just the best setup for me to get to, so I had this tiny little sink. I was going with what I could work with at the time. Now I'm going to show you the vegan brush cleanse from ALORI. You can see how well this just disintegrates the color in the brush. It does an amazing job. And I'm going to insert a picture where I used this to clean all my brushes, and you can see how nice and white they are. When you first wash them though, they kind of have almost like a slight stain from being used, and as they dry, they go white. Like I remember this brush right here, this is the Classic Cheek. I used a bright color of blush on this. I cleaned it, and then when it was wet, it looked like it had a little bit of color left on it. But once it's dry, it's kind of like blonde hair, especially if you have a little bit of brassiness to it. It looks darker whenever it's wet, and then as it dries, it lightens up, and that's exactly what happens with the brushes. You also want to make sure that your brush isn't leaning at an angle like this, because water will still go down. That's the way it's going to travel. So you want to make sure that it is completely flat wherever you do store your brushes. I never ever use a brush, even if it's been 24 hours, they've been drying. Sometimes they're not fully dry. If they have the slightest little bit of softness that I know is not supposed to be there, and I can feel like it's slightly damp, I don't use it because I'm going to mess up my bristles. I want to keep the shape how it's supposed to be. I don't want to mess up my bristles, so I'm very careful about how I go about this entire process. And I wash my brushes after every single use, my eye brushes, not my face brushes, but my eye brushes get washed every single time that I use them, because as you can see, I use a lot of different color, not necessarily with this bunch because I was using more natural shades, but you can see the colors I was using with the ones that I was washing. And yeah, if I try to use that again the next day, it's just not going to work out. It's going to alter the shade that I go in with the next time, which makes me think of the color switch. Personally, I've never tried the color switch. I just think I invest a lot of money in my brushes, and that thing terrifies me. I have no evidence that it will mess up your brush. I don't know. I just have a gut feeling that you know, kind of texture, and you're taking your brush to it, is going to mess up your brush. I just feel like it's going to mess up your brush. Again, I could be wrong. It's just my opinion. Again, I rather go this route, and that's just what I do. I mentioned that I like to use the conditioner to condition my brushes, so I'm going to show you a few of those being put in. So what I like to do is take a little bit of this in a cup, and I will fill it about like this much, so that when the brush is sitting in the conditioner, again, it's not going up into the ferrule. I like to leave it in there for about 5 minutes minimum, and then I will gently rinse it out. And I like to just make sure that when I'm feeling the brush hairs or bristles, that I don't feel too much slipperiness. Kind of like when you wash your hair, you want to make sure you get the conditioner out. You don't want to have it in there because it's going to alter the hairs on the brush. Not necessarily like in a bad way, it's just whenever you go to use them, it's not going to be great. You're going to need to wash that brush again. You are going to see only one brush in there at a time, but typically I would just go ahead and wash all of them, put them in there, wait, and then take them back out and rinse them all at one time. But for the sake of the video, I was just kind of showing you what I did. I did end up using all of that conditioner by the time I was done washing all of my brushes because I had a lot. Moving on to my sponge, I decided to use the same style sponge for each one of the soaps. And I do the same method with each one of these. I get the sponge wet first, and then I start working the sponge on it, flipping it around, working it on there, squeezing out the gunk, and repeat. I'm telling you that the little little thing that I have, it's like a silicone pad. It gets stuff out of these sponges so much quicker. Any of them work. I had one of those come in with my Sonia Kashuk cleanser, but I haven't repurchased the Sonia Kashuk because I like this one so much more. And then I will show you, again, same method with the Dove Sensitive Soap. And you can see how it comes clean. And then lastly, with the ALORI Vegan Brush Cleanser. You can use this for brushes and sponges. It's not just for your brushes. One thing I want to say is that I have tried several different types of brush cleansers, and not of all of them are created equally. Sometimes coconut oil in a brush cleanser, my brushes end up so funky and I can't use it, while other times I have no issues with it at all. This one right here, I do have to be careful with because it will soften up my brushes a little bit too much sometimes. So I don't use this on the daily. This is not like one of those that I use every single time. But if I know that my brushes are starting to feel like, okay, we need a little extra softness to them, not just my conditioner, I like to use this. And especially if I don't have one of my Beauty Blender solids, because not only do I get the deluxe size, I buy the full size, and sometimes I do run out. This is what I'm going to grab to get the color out, because the Dove Bar soap won't work as well as both of those. But I still love my Dove Bar soap. Okay, moving on to another thing. People ask me all the time, like Wayne Goss brushes, the face brushes, how do you wash them? Again, these are the products that I use. This is a Sonia G Master Face Brush. I love this thing. And as you can see, after it's been washed, I'm going to show you a before picture right now because I'm going to forget. This is while they're all wet, and then the very next morning when they are dry, so you guys can see how they held up their shape, the color, all of that. This is what the shape looks like right after I've washed it. And you saw that it kind of almost had like a pointed tip to it whenever I did this, but then this is how it comes out. No hairs are being sprawled out everywhere. It keeps its shape. It's beautiful. I feel like I am forgetting to tell you guys something, but I can't think of what it is. So if you have any questions about this, please leave them down below and I will get back to as many as I possibly can. Again, I just want to reiterate, this is what works for me. This is what I've been doing for years now. I love this method. Clearly, my brushes stay in good condition and I just don't have any issues with this process. With that being said, I remember what it is that I wanted to say. MAC brush cleanser or any brush cleanser that contains alcohol. I used to use the MAC brush cleanser and I used to dilute it even because I knew that it contained alcohol and I did not want to dry up my brushes. I still ended up drying up my brushes, but mainly that was because I used to do freelance makeup. So I would go to people's houses, I would travel, weddings and all that stuff. And you have to use something that is going to disinfect. I am using my brushes on me, so I just stick with this. I do not suggest the MAC brush cleanser. I don't know anything about any of the other ones that contain alcohol, but it's an ingredient that I do not want on my natural hair brushes. The majority of my brushes are natural hair, and I know that that will just dry them out. And I've heard people talking about using oils and stuff to really condition their brushes. It's something that just scares me. Again, I'm not discrediting it. I'm just saying that I'm scared of it. All right, you guys, let me know if you have any questions down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.